Hello everyone, my name is Shiry and welcome to our lesson today. Today we're learning English and we're going to talk about literature. Yes, and especially we're going to talk about the short story, Rules of the Game. Rules of the Game was written by the author ניתן. And before we begin, I'd like to present the lesson to show you a little bit of introduction. What is in this lesson? First of all, who is this lesson for? The lesson is meant or aimed for students who have already read the story, but don't worry because this is the magic of VOD. So if you haven't yet read the story, just pause the video, go and read the story, and come back to us and hit play again, and you can join us in understanding rules of the game. What will we do in this lesson? What are we going to do in this lesson? In this lesson, we are going to go over the story. We're going to have a little bit of understanding and make the story a little bit more accessible to us. We're going to discuss theme. We're going to discuss all kinds of insights and ideas that are discussed in the story and the messages for the author to the readers. What is theme? We're going to talk about that a little bit later. What will we get at the end of the lesson? At the end of the lesson, each and every one of you is going to get a toolkit for you to use when you're doing your Bagrut examination or writing your logs. So you can just come back to the lesson and remind yourself of what we've talked about. This will help you understand and write and answer questions about that story. What do you need? Okay, so what do you need? What you need for this lesson is something to write on, like a pen and paper or a pencil, or you can open a blank Google Doc, so you can jot down your notes as we go along. All right, ready? Let's go. Oh, stop, hold on, just a second. One more thing. We're going to talk about the power of pausing. So every now and then, throughout the lesson, I'm going to ask you a question. And then what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video, think about it for a while, write down your answer or just answer it verbally. Just say the answer and then hit play again, and then I'm going to tell you the answer. This way we can communicate a little bit throughout the story. Okay, so every time you see this icon, you know there's going to be a question coming at you. Okay, let's try that one time. First time. We're going to try clicking the pause button. I'm going to ask you a riddle, like a challenge, and see if you know the answer. So here it goes. Two men were playing chess. They played 5 games. Each man won the same number of games. How is this possible? Okay, now I want you to click pause, think about it, answer the question, and then click play again, and I'm going to tell you the answer. Ready? Pause. Okay, you're back, which means you've done the work. You thought about it, you have the answer, and now I'm going to tell you the answer to the riddle. The answer is, ready? Drum roll. They played different people. Yeah, well, that was a kind of a trick question, but this was just for practice, for you to know what to do once you see that pause icon. Okay, so let's begin. Theme. Ooh, that's a major thing. What is theme? When you speak about theme, then you actually think about and talk about why we read books and analyze books in the first place, why we study literature. So all these authors that wrote the great literature pieces, they had something to tell us. They had great ideas or insights about human nature, about what it means to be a human being. but they're wise, they're smart, and they know that they don't, if they just come out and lecture it to us or like put it on a sign, then it's not going to be so meaningful for us, and it's not going to stay with us for very long. So what they do is it's not going to be meaningful as storytelling does. So if they hide their messages in a nice story, in a nice plot line, and we need to discover what it really means, it's going to be so much more meaningful for us, and it's going to stay with us for a lot longer. So this is what theme is all about. So whenever you see this icon, you see that thought bubble, then it means that the theme pops up. It pops up through the lines of the plot, of the storyline. Okay, so this is the time where the author says something about human nature, about what it means to all kinds of insights. Okay, so watch out for that icon. What it means for us is what is really the author's message to the readers. Okay, can you see this one? This icon means conflict. This is a story about conflict, and we're going to see it in so many different levels and so many different ways. So every time, I want to make it accessible to you. So every time the subject of conflict pops out, you're going to see this icon, okay? So, conflict. Let's talk a little bit about that. When you want to write or answer questions about this story, which is hugely based on all kinds of conflicts, you need words. You need to have the vocabulary that you can use to write and answer questions about the story. So let's think a little bit about conflict. Look at this picture. What does it mean to you? It says conflict, right? There are two people here. They look angry, they look mad, they're facing each other, and you're asking yourself, what do you see in this picture? Why are they so mad? Why are they so angry? So usually when people have conflict, they're looking at basically the same thing from different sides, yeah? And they don't agree, okay? Maybe one of them is trying to be stronger than the other. He tries to beat the other person. Conflicts is not necessarily between people. It could be between societies, between cultures, between genders, and of course all kinds of other ways of conflict. So I want you to think back about conflicts that you've had, especially these days. Many times you have conflicts with your brothers or sisters, probably about the computer or the television. Sometimes you have conflicts with your parents or with your friends. So where do you put yourself in terms of conflict? If we want to discuss conflict, we need words, we need the vocabulary. So let us look at a few words that can help you talk about conflict. First of all, there's strategy. Strategy is the method, is the way, the way you can use to beat your enemy or your opponent or the person who you are arguing with. Okay, you think about it, you plan it ahead, and you try to use it to win. Argument has two meanings. An argument could be a discussion you have with someone else. You have one opinion, he has another opinion, and are trying to convince him. And when you're trying to convince someone, you're using arguments. So the arguments are reasons or proofs, or a proof, or you can use an example or an explanation if you want to convince the other side that you are right. To rise above something. To rise above something is to transcend, is to overcome. If you have an obstacle or something that's blocking you, you want to rise above it, means that you want to get over it and move on, not let it block you. Circumstances. Circumstances is a situation you are in. Usually you use the word circumstances when you describe something negative. You try to rise above the circumstances, like it's a situation that you can't control, but it's holding you down or it's limiting you. So that's your circumstances. For instance, if someone is very poor or doesn't have education or is born to a certain, maybe he's discriminated against. So that's his circumstances that he cannot control. Wicked. Being wicked means being bad, being mean, doing something to hurt other people. It could be usually not considered as really evil, but it's sort of acting not in a nice way. Adversary. Adversary, these two words, adversary and opponent, mean more or less the same. It means the other side. Like if you play a game, for instance, you usually have an adversary. It's pointless if you don't have someone to play against. So usually you want to beat your adversary, you want to win. And the last one is, the last two words are the word invisible. Invisible means you can't see it, it's not visible. Visible means you can see it. The word television, vision is to see. Television comes from the word vision and the same word family. Strength. Strength is a power, something you have that you can use if you want to win. So all these words, we're going to incorporate them into the lesson, and you can use them when you're writing about rules of the game. Okay, are you ready? I'm psyched. If you want to practice these words and other words, vocabulary words from the story, just scan this QR code and you can play around with it after the lesson and practice the words by yourself. All right, ready? Move on. Before we start, let's talk a little bit about the author. The author's name is Amy She's an American author. She has an origin, a Chinese origin. Her families are immigrants. They came to America. She was born in America. She was born in 1952. She's still alive. And her parents, of course, wanted her to be a doctor or a lawyer, but she didn't really like science, so she decided to become a business writer. Only in her late 50s, in the middle of her 30s, she started to write fiction. And what she was really surprised about was the content of the story, because she usually tried to play down her ethnicity, the fact that she was Chinese. But in her stories, she started to unfold the lives of Chinese immigrants in America, and mainly the relationship between mothers and daughters. And this is exactly what our story is about. Now, this lady, Amy Tan, had a very interesting life. I'm going to show you a few facts about her life, and you're going to decide which ones are true and which ones are false. So I'm going to read it out to you, and you're going to choose and think in your head, and I'm going to tell you at the end. I'm going to tell you the answer at the end. So true or false? 1. Her mother held a knife to her throat and threatened to kill her while the two were arguing over Amy's boyfriend. You see the word argue here? So true or false? And number 2. Tan and her mother did not speak for 6 months after Tan dropped out of college. Could that be true? Number 3, Tan has a master's degree. Number 4, Tan used to work as a pizza maker. And number 5, for a short time, while Tan was in college, she became temporarily mute. Mute means that she couldn't speak. So think about these facts, decide which ones are true and which ones are false, and I'm going to tell you the answer after the break. Okay, we're going to have a break in a few minutes, and after the break, I'm going to tell you the answer. So let's have a little bit of background about the game of chess. The game of chess is very relevant to our story. It's a game of strategy. It resembles a battle between two forces, two armies, led by a figurehead king and a powerful queen. It was thought to have been invented in India, and then it sort of moved to Persia, and from there to the whole world. Today it is played throughout the world. Chess is considered one of the most competitive sports in the world. It is followed like major sporting events, and the people who played at the top level, like the professional chess players, because they're sponsored, they are millionaires. So I wrote down a few of the vocabulary that's relevant to the game of chess. That's strategy, adversary and opponent. Of course, you use strategy and you use all kinds of moves in order to beat your opponent. Okay, so let's move on. Now, the name of the story is Rules of the Game. I want to think about the rules of my game. So write this down. What I want for you to do is I want for you to watch out for these icons. Remember, we said this icon goes for conflict. Every time we talk about conflict in a story, you're gonna see this icon. This goes for theme, okay, the thought bubble, and this one, the queen, in chess goes for the title. The title of the story is very important. Rules of the game. And when you see the queen popping up, you need to think, what are the rules? What is the game? What is the author using chess to represent? Why chess? Okay, so I want you to remember that as we start talking about the story. Okay, let's start with the setting. Setting means where and when the story takes place. So the story takes place at Chinatown, San Francisco. Look at that beautiful picture. I want you to see the beautiful pictures in Chinatown. It's a small neighborhood that was established by immigrant from China. They wanted to feel more at home, so they wanted it to look a lot like their homeland. But you can see the foreign and the local coming together. You can see the English letters, the English words, and New York or San Francisco in the background. If you've ever been to Chinatown, you know what I'm talking about. It's sort of two worlds coming together. Okay, it takes place at a 2-bedroom flat on Waverly Place, Chinatown, above a Chinese bakery. Can you imagine the smells and the scents in the morning when you live right on top of a Chinese bakery? Here's a picture of a Chinese bakery with all kinds of pastries, and there's a little flat you can see right above it. Okay, before we go on the break, don't forget the riddle you need to think about. Okay, so true or false? Amy Tan's mother held a knife to her throat and threatened to kill her while the two were arguing over Amy's boyfriend. Tan and her mother did not speak for 6 months after Tan dropped out of college. Tan has a master's degree. Tan used to work as a pizza maker. And for a short time, while Tan was in college, she became temporarily mute. Which one is true and which one is false? We're going to come back here after the break, and I'm going to tell you the answer. Bye. Hi everyone, and welcome back to talking about the story Rules of the Game by ניתן. My name is Shiry, and I'd like to remind you the riddle that I gave you before we went on the break. So we had this little challenge, and I asked you, what do you think, which one of these is true and which one is false about Нітен's life? So are you ready for the answer? Have you thought about it? Some of you will say, it's probably not all of them are true, but the truth is, get ready for this. This is huge. They are all true. Yes, they are all true. Her mother did hold a knife to her throat and threatened to kill her while the two were arguing over Amy's boyfriend. Can you believe it? Yes, Tan and her mother did not speak for 6 months after Tan dropped out of college. And in many of Tan's later works, she relates to the difficulty in the relationship between mothers and daughters. Tan has a master's degree, yes, it's true, and Tan used to work as a pizza maker. She worked hard, she's very diligent, and she managed to take herself to the top, to rise above her own circumstances. Remember that? Remember those words, vocabulary words? And for a short time while Tan was in college, she became temporarily mute. If this interests you, you can read about her biography online. So let's see. Let's go back to the story. Okay, so let's have a little recap, a little summary of the story, what goes on there. If you don't really remember, maybe you read it a while ago, I'd like to remind you a few details. So, of course, we said the story takes place in Chinatown, San Francisco, and the two main characters in the story are the protagonist and narrator, Waverly Zhang. She's a Chinese-American girl, and her mother, Mrs. Zhang. She's a Chinese immigrant to America. So her daughter, Waverly, was born in America. And of course, she has this inner conflict inside herself between the American and the Chinese culture. We're going to discuss it a little bit later. The story describes Waverly's meteoric rise to becoming a national chess champion thanks to her characteristics, hard work, and the Chinese values. Now, okay, so let's get into the story. We begin at the age of 6. The first lines of the story say this, okay? Listen to the quote. I was 6 when my mother taught me the art of invisible strength. It was a strategy for winning arguments, respect from others, and eventually, though neither of us knew it at the time, chess games. Now, this beginning, we go straight into the story, and it raises one of the most important metaphors and one of the most important terms in this story, which is invisible strength. What is the art of invisible strength? The mother also talks about, she says this quote, strongest wind cannot be seen. Now, these things usually wakes up our imagination and makes us think of all kinds of things. So let us pause for a minute and think about this question. Okay, I'm going to ask you the question. You're going to hit the pause button, think about it, answer, either in writing or verbally, and then hit play again, and we're going to answer it together. So this is a major, major question. If you've read the story, you can try to answer this. What is the art of invisible strength? Okay, now hit pause, answer it, and hit play again. I'm waiting. Okay, you're back, which means you've done the thinking, you've done the work, and you probably have the answer. So let's look at this answer. Invisible strength is an inner power of self-control. It enables a person not to reveal anything, not to expose his feelings or emotions, to keep them to himself or herself. It is a strategy that helps a person win arguments, gain respect from others, and also defeat chess opponents. As you can see, I sort of highlighted in red the vocabulary words that we already talked about and we can use when we're describing the art of invisible strength. Basically, if we talk about conflict, then the art of invisible strength can help you win or beat the opponent. Okay? All right, now let's go back to the rules of my game. You have to write this down. All right? Do you remember? We had all these kinds of icons that told us how we go along and what we think about while we read and talk about the story. We had the little icon that talks about conflict, and the one about theme, the thought bubble, and the queen from chess that talks about the title, rules of the game. And now we have another one, the fourth and last one, perhaps one of the most important and dominant techniques in this story, which is characterization. What does that mean? An author has all kinds of techniques to describe their character to you. So it's usually called show and tell. There are two major ways to characterize a character in the story. You can tell about the character. They are nice, they are boring, they are stingy, or they are mean. Another way, which is more sophisticated, is to show. That means to show their thoughts, their actions, or what other people say about them. And in this way, the reader builds in their mind the character. So every time you see this little icon, you know that this part of the story goes for characterization. Okay, so these are the four, and we're going to go through the story with them. So let's start with characterization. This first part that we've read about... These are the four, yes. So this first part that we've read about invisible strength goes to characterize Waverly's mother. Waverly's mother is trying to teach her children all kinds of techniques and strategies and ways to help them in their life. And we can see that in the little incident in the market, in the store, where Waverly, as a 6-year-old child, she wants a candy. So she screams and yells and she yanks her mother's arm and she wants the candy. What does the mother do? She tells her, bite back your tongue, which means be quiet. So she teaches her about the art of invisible strength, and then she gives her an example, or she lets her practice it. So, of course, she doesn't buy her the candy, but the next time they're in the store, little Waverly remembers that lesson, and she keeps quiet. She doesn't show her feelings. She doesn't tell her mother, I want the candy. No, she doesn't show her what she wants or what she thinks. And as a reward, the mother buys her the candy. She buys her the salted plums. So this goes to show you the character of the mother. Very strict, education-wise, but she means well. She wants her children to succeed. So what do we like about the mother, Waverly's mother? Does she remind us of someone? I had students that told me, oh yeah, she reminds me a little bit of my mother. Because she has all these kind of humorous observations, and she uses proverbs to explain truths in life to her children. So this is what Waverly says about her mother. My mother imparted her daily truths so she can help my older brothers and me rise above our circumstances. And her circumstances being a family of immigrants living in Chinatown, not very rich, they were poor, and being an immigrant in a foreign country is very difficult. You have a lot of challenges and obstacles in front of you if you want to have opportunities in life. Okay, so we're moving on, and this is the setting. The setting takes us into the story. Waverly says the best playground, they have playground, but the best playground for her and her friends was the dark alley itself. An alley, as you can see in the picture, is like a very narrow street. And Chinatown is full of these little and narrow alleys where adventures happen for Waverly and her friends. And this shows you really the culture, the fish market, everything that happens there. It's very colorful, and you can really sense and feel and almost smell all these kinds of weird fish and seafood that are there in the market. And here comes the moment where the first encounter with the Caucasian in the market, in the fish market. And this goes to characterize Waverly. Because in her engagement with that man, the white man, the Caucasian, we can see that Waverly likes playing games. She likes being on the upper side of the argument, and she plays with somebody from the outside, and she really uses her advantage. And she's understanding the rules of the game. There's a clash, you know. Did you see the conflict icon? The conflict between the American culture and the Chinese culture. Okay, and another thing that goes to see both characters' traits is the incident with the Chinese torture. While mother is brushing her daughter's hair and pulling her hair into pigtails, Waverly pretends to be very naive and asks her, "Ma, what is Chinese torture?" Now, Waverly relates to herself as being wicked and sly, and because she's being cynical. She's actually relating to the fact that her mother is pulling her hair and hurting her, but she cannot say anything because remember, in the Chinese culture, they have to respect their elders. She cannot talk back. But so she finds a way to sort of hint or give her mother a clue. The mother answers the question straight. And what does she say? She says, who told you that? Oh, a boy at school. Don't listen to that boy at school. Don't listen to that American boy telling you about torture. Let me tell you about torture. What does the mother say? She says, yeah, Chinese people, they do medicine, they do painting. They're not lazy like American. We do torture, best torture. So whether the mother is saying this seriously or maybe she understands the fact that Waverly is being cynical, she talks about her life. She talks about her struggle as an immigrant. And what is she teaching to her daughter? She's saying, you're going to have an uphill battle. It's not easy to be an immigrant daughter in a foreign country. You're going to have to work very hard to have any kind of opportunity. Okay, so moving on. To culture class, we discussed that. Let's move on. Let the games begin. So when the story really begins, when they get the chess set. How do they get the chess set? First we see, goes to characterization, how does Waverly choose her gift? It happens in the Baptist church, the first Chinese Baptist church in Chinatown, and they have a Christmas party and they can choose from a big bag, they can choose their gifts. And Waverly, at the tender age of 6, she strategizes. She really has tactics on how to choose the best gift out of the bag. And she really does. And she gets a nice gift. And then she says, when we got home, my mother told Vincent to throw the chess set away. She not want it, we not want it, she said, tossing her head stiffly to the side with a tight, proud smile. Now this goes to character. And I want to ask you this. Why? Why does the mother, you remember they got the chess set at church, and she says, thank you, this is too good, this is too expensive. And only when they got home, she told her son, throw it away. Why? Hit the pause button, think about it, write your answer, and when you come back, I'm going to tell you the answer. Okay, so you're back. Well, this goes to the culture clash. Waverly's mother comes from the Chinese culture, where you have to, it is called save face. It's a very communal culture where everybody's together and we think about the we and not the me. And in this kind of culture, you try to avoid confrontation as much as you can. So you try to not insult or offend anyone, and you don't show your feelings. Okay, you don't show your expressions. So this is the invisible strength that the mother's talking about. They have to save face. In church, she says, oh, thank you very much. This is too good for us. At home, throw it away. It's obviously being used. Of course, the kids start playing. They don't listen. But let's talk a little bit about the conflict between cultures. Chinese people, what do they value? Okay, they came with a set of values, showing respect, especially respect to your elders, of course, your parents. You never talk back to your parents. Avoiding confrontation, valuing modesty and humility. You don't show off, you don't brag your accomplishments, and you respect the elders in obedience. You're obedient. You do what you're told, especially if you're young. On the other side, the American culture is a very individualistic culture. We know that, right? Take care of number one. And they encourage open discussion. What you see is what you get, okay? I'm going to tell you what I want. I'm going to say what I think and feel in your face, even if it does cause confrontation. I'm not afraid of that. I'm for self-expression. They encourage assertiveness and independence. That's like the motto of the American culture. And inevitably, there's going to be a clash. So you can see that in this picture, the conflict between the beautiful Chinese writing and the American visuals. Okay, so, and then there's an early on discussion about the rules of the game. They have this, Vincent has this book of instructions, and he tells her, and of course Waverly wants to play, let me play. And of course she's answered with, no. In other words, girls don't play chess, which echoes sort of something that Bobby Fischer, maybe the greatest American grand champion in chess, said in real life, women will never be able to play at our level in chess. So it's hidden, but it's there, the conflict between the boys versus girls conflict. There's multiple cultural clash. And then he explained this to her. She managed to convince him. Again, she's very smart. She's very strategic. She managed to convince, she bribes him with her candy, with her lifesavers, and he explained her the rules. And then she goes out and asks, why? Why can't they move more steps? Because they're pawns, he said. But why do they go crossways to take other men? Why aren't there any women or children? Why is the sky blue? Why must you always ask stupid questions? Asked Vincent. This is a game. These are the rules. Think about the time when you were explained the rules of the game. Or better yet, think about the time you tried to explain rules of video game to your parent. Didn't they ask all kinds of weird questions? And you have to explain them. These are the rules. Rules are rules. Sometimes they make no sense, but if you want to play the game, you have to learn the rules. Of course, it's interpreted into a game of power, and Waverly's mother comes in there, and she says, this American rules. Every time people come out from foreign country, must know rules. You not know, just say, too bad, go back. They're not telling you why, so you can use their way, go forward. They say, don't know why? You find out yourself. She tossed her head back with a satisfied smile. The mother is taking this into her own world. And what is she teaching her children? What is the mother teaching her children? Let's pause and answer. What the mother is teaching her children is, if you want something, you have to figure it out for yourself. Let's move on. Now, Waverly is starting to learn the game of chess, and immediately she loves it. Okay, and this is sort of an active part. I found out all about the whys. I read the rules. I studied each chess piece. I learned about the opening moves. I learned about the middle game. I learned why it is essential in the end game. I discovered why all these verbs. I learned why. This is a literary term that is called repetition. Now, what is the point being made here? Let's pause and answer. Why do they repeat it? The answer is there are two answers to this. First of all, it explains to you that chess is a very difficult game to master. And she's really doing the work. She's really doing the job. She's learning it. She's reading it. It's not enough for her. She's going to the library and she borrows books and she reads them. And then she looks up terms on the dictionary. and she gains all this knowledge, absorbs all this knowledge, and she's obsessed with it. Okay, what can we learn from that? That you need to ask stupid questions to get knowledge. Yeah, don't be afraid. If you learn and you do the work, you can win, right? Okay. I also found out why I should never reveal why to others. A little knowledge withheld is a great advantage one should store for future use. That is the power of chess. I love the secrets I found. And yes, she loved the secrets, and this is why she could win. And now we're going to finish the first part of the lesson. And when we come back in the second part of the lesson, I'm going to tell you the biggest secret that she found. Okay? So I want you to see you back here in part 2 of Rules of the Game.